Welcome to another module of Introduction to Public Services, Providing Library Services, a State of Iowa core course for the State Library Endorsement Program. My name is Becky Heil, and I'm the Southeast District Consultant and a member of the Continuing Education team for the State Library. Today, we'll be talking about the variety of services your library may provide to your community. Library patrons encompass a wide range of ages and abilities, and all of them have different needs. So it's important for a librarian to determine how best to serve them. We will explore two of the primary services libraries provide, reference and reader's advisory. Another major service is programming, but we'll tackle that in another module. First, let's start with thinking about how libraries fulfill their role in supporting the educational, informational, and entertainment needs of their community. We will also explore how to implement services to engage all members of society. One definition of library services is any service the library provides to your community. Many of those services fall into one of three categories: educational, informational, and entertainment. Most libraries have mission statements relating to lifelong learning, and many of the services we provide fit in that educational category. As an example, you may provide access to current technology, which then points to a need for classes to teach people how to use it. Non-formal learning opportunities like one-on-one computer help and informal learning such as a tech petting zoo or self-directed programs like STEM or STEAM kits that you put out for use fall into the informational services we might provide. Outreach services for the library community to increase the use of library services and to reach underserved populations. Our collections, a reader's advisory service, and interlibrary loan may be examples of entertainment services. Programming is a service, but it's a major one that makes libraries more than just places for collections. Libraries have a long history of providing programming which can fit in all three of these categories: educational, informational, and entertainment or recreational. Your mission statement should reflect the library's current situation and answer the following questions. What do you do? Who do you serve? And how do you do it? That is just another way of talking about services. In addition to being a useful tool on its own, a mission statement can help a library as they develop a variety of planning documents, such as a technology plan, a long-range plan, marketing plans, or service plans. A mission statement can guide and drive the decisions for purchasing materials, selecting technology, or developing programming. If the product or service doesn't support the library's mission, it might not be a good investment or approach. In the first module, you learned how to collect community information and determine community needs. So now we must use that to develop library services specific to those needs. As an example, in a community I worked with, they found that their town had a reputation for being unfriendly. The library worked with the city and business leaders to bring in experts in customer service and train their workforce to better attend to the needs of their citizens. They purchased materials and put together information sheets about customer service, and their staff led by example by providing superior service to their patrons. Marianne Morey, Central District Consultant, tells the story of a community that learned through census records that the vast majority of the housing stock in their town was over 100 years old. That led them to purchase more do-it-yourself titles and videos. They also started programming to teach homeowners how to do basic home repairs. There are libraries that have tool lending libraries, which might also have been in response to a community need just like that one. There are many ways to gauge the interest of library users and non-users alike. We talked about surveys and focus groups earlier, but simply talking to the people in your community, whether at the grocery store or on the sidewalk or in the library, can give you information about what people want. In this section, we will attempt to understand the needs of all age groups using the library by supporting lifelong learners. We're going to look at how developmental characteristics can impact and inform library services and programs. We are all lots more familiar with the CDC now, but did you know that they have a great resource on childhood development? Much of the information on the following slides came from there. You can see that each of these three major groups can be broken down even further. There is quite a difference between an infant and a 5-year-old. And think about trying to have a 13-year-old and an 18-year-old in the same library program. I did have one interesting observation from another website that I consulted. They had 4 tables of developmental stages, and they broke them down into 3 separate tables just for birth to age 6, and then 1 table for school-age kids that was broken down by 6 to 8-year-olds, 9 to 11-year-olds, and 12 to 14-year-olds, as well as 15 to 17-year-olds. Now, what does that tell us? That birth to age 6 had 3 separate tables and elementary school age children had just 1 table. Those young brains and bodies are developing much more rapidly, and the changes are dramatic in those early years. How do the developmental characteristics of infants and toddlers impact the services we provide? We don't have time to go over all the developmental stages, but here are the highlights. Children develop skills in 4 main areas of development. Cognitive development, which is the child's ability to learn and solve problems. Social and emotional development, how they interact with others. Speech and language development, libraries are very good at this part. And then the 4th is movement and physical development, which can include fine motor skills and gross motor skills. Now, as I talk about each of these developmental stages, think about how the developmental characteristics of our very youngest patrons impact those services that we provide. Let's talk first about cognitive development. There is a wide variety here. If you start with infants, they might be starting to look for hidden things. They might be able to point to body parts. And then we head into the toddlers. They can identify familiar things in picture books. They can follow a simple single or 2-step request. Toddlers like to group things by shapes and colors, and they like to play pretend. Then we turn to preschoolers' cognitive development. They can put together a 3 or 4-part puzzle. They can turn book pages. They can name colors. They can count to 10. Let's turn now to social and emotional development. Again, there's a wide variety. Infants might be clingy. They may be able to engage in simple pretend games. Toddlers like to help with things like putting away toys, but they may also defy directions like sit down or come back. Preschoolers like routine. Preschoolers know how to take turns. They like to play with other kids, not just be beside them. And they can tell the difference between make-up, made up, and real stories. For language development, again, another wide variety. Infants can respond to hearing their name. They know what no means. They can imitate sounds and gestures, and they may know several words. Toddlers can follow simple directions like hearing short stories or songs, and they may ask simple questions. Preschoolers can recite nursery rhymes, sing songs, they may know their numbers and letters, and they can answer simple questions about stories. For movement and physical development, One more time, there's a wide variety in these three age groups. Infants may walk holding on to surfaces, they may be able to climb stairs, and they may be able to drink from a cup. A toddler can run, they can jump up and down, they can stand on their tippy toes, they can draw lines and shapes, they can throw a ball, they can dance. They know how to get seated in a chair. And a preschooler can hop, walk backwards, use scissors, or pour liquids with help. All these things will change how you provide services for young children. While I understand that not every community is large enough to have three separate story times for infants, toddlers, and preschoolers, I hope that you're able to consider the abilities and skills of each of these separate groups as you plan your programs. So here are some examples of services that libraries provide to that first age group. Early literacy services might include the program 1,000 Books Before Kindergarten, which is a free program that encourages parents to read 1,000 books with their child before he or she enters kindergarten. Experts say children need to reach this goal before entering school in order to help them learn to read for themselves. Taking advantage of this 1,000 Books Before Kindergarten program is just one service you can provide for local families. Some libraries will provide book lists for parents, as well as awards for a child when they hit a certain milestone. Many libraries will have a celebration for each child when they reach their goal, like maybe putting their picture on a social media page. Libraries want to encourage parents to read to their children, and this website has a lot of facts that you can share with your patrons. For example, did you know one of the best ways to encourage reading is to spend time sharing books every day? Parents, did you know that if you read to your child 3 books a day for 1 year, you will have read 1,000 books? And did you know that reading together helps develop important pre-reading skills that provide a solid reading foundation for school and learning success? Plus, remember to remind those parents reading together is fun. Another service we might provide is school readiness. One program that helps with that is called Every Child Ready to Read. While this isn't exactly a service, librarians use it to emphasize what we call the 5 practices: talking, singing, reading, writing, and playing. We also remind them of the importance of parental involvement. Remind your patrons that parents and caregivers are a child's first and best teacher. And by using those 5 simple but effective practices, parents and caregivers can help children develop early literacy skills that will get them ready to read. You can also use these 5 practices as you develop library services. Here are the 5 again. Talking. Talking with children helps them learn oral language, one of the most critical early literacy skills. Children learn about language by listening to people talk and joining in the conversation. Engage young children in conversation as they use your library. Second, singing. Singing develops language skills. It slows down the language so children can hear the different sounds in words. It helps children learn new words and information. You'll want to incorporate this one into your preschool story times. Number 3, reading. Reading together develops vocabulary and comprehension, nurtures a love for reading, and motivates children to want to learn to read. The connection here should be obvious. Number 4, writing. Children become aware that printed letters stand for spoken words as they see print used in their daily lives. Do you have a whiteboard where kids can practice writing words? Or an alphabet banner on your wall so they see letters that make up words at your library? Number 5, playing. Play is one of the best ways for children to learn language and literacy skills. They learn about language through playing, as the activities help them put thoughts into words and talk about what they're doing. Many libraries are now providing space for independent play as children use the libraries. Other example of services to infants, toddlers, and preschoolers may be early literacy backpacks, book bundles, a parent-teacher collection, handouts, newsletters with information, or information about other community services. Even though we talk a lot about early literacy and reading readiness at libraries, it's always good to remember libraries don't teach preschoolers how to read, but libraries can help parents learn how to help their children develop literacy skills by providing training, information, and support. Librarians need to work with parents and caregivers to instill behaviors and practices that will allow them to enhance learning and literacy at home on a daily basis. The library's important role is to promote early literacy, to explain it, and to model behavior for the parents and caregivers who are with the children every day. Elementary grade children and tweens is the next group we're going to talk about. Typically, tweens are considered grades 3 through 6. Again, I want you to think about how the developmental characteristics of elementary age children impact the services we provide. We're going to look at this age group by the same 4 areas of development. Cognitive development. Elementary grade students can complete instructions with 3 or more steps. They know left from right. They can write stories. They can write letters. They can tell time. Social and emotional development. Children of this age cooperate and play with others. They may feel jealousy. They may have a best friend. They can see from another person's perspective. Language development. Children at this age can read books at grade level. They can follow written instructions. They can plan and give a speech. Movement and physical development. Children at this age can draw and paint. They can practice physical skills to get better at them. So what services are you providing that help with these developmental stages? Maybe a craft program. Maybe telling stories at a program from another person's perspective. You can have them work on following written instructions to make something. You can have ways that they can work together to accomplish a common goal. And we can provide lots of opportunities to practice their physical skills. For the most part, youth services librarians do a pretty good job of understanding and meeting the need for early literacy programming, those preschoolers we talked about. However, our focus on early literacy program has caused us to leave school-age children by the wayside. In many libraries, these children age out of preschool early literacy programming and don't have much to look forward to at the library until they're old enough to enjoy the teen programs that librarians have been building over the past decade. School-age children are at this wonderful age in which they're really starting to become their own people. We should offer them activities in a program setting to really explore topics and ideas they may not really have interacted with before, like building or mummification or zeppelins, every interesting thing about the world. We should offer school-age children programs in which kids can discover, learn about, and celebrate their interests with their peers. Here's some information that we heard from real-life families. They don't have time for one more out-of-school activity. In-house programs just don't reach the kids who have crazy busy lives. And that's where outreach to schools can play a huge part in your community. Focus more on no school days and early release days. Try to concentrate on school breaks when parents might be looking for something to do with their school-age kids. Collections are also a big part of the services we provide for this age group. Computer use, they're always in the library after school. Homework help is another way we provide services for these kids. Maker spaces, a Lego club, reader's advisory, school visits, summer reading, Battle of the Book, Iowa Children's Choice. Those are all examples of services for elementary age students. Now let's talk about the developmental milestones for those teens or the 12 to 18-year-olds. The cognitive development of those kids continues to differentiate them from their parents. Their ability to think logically is improving, but their prefrontal cortex is not yet mature. Social and emotional development. These kids display moodiness, an increased need for privacy. They may spend more time with their friends than with their family. They now have the ability to empathize with others, and there's an increased interest in dating and sexuality. Development in language. Now these kids can use speech that isn't literal. They can have complex conversations. They can write persuasively. They can speak differently in different groups. Movement and physical development. Puberty. Need I say more? So, what services do we provide for our teens and young adults based on those developmental characteristics? One major one is the books and magazines. In public libraries, teens will find a section of books specifically for them, often called young adults. Not only will teens be able to find resources for their schoolwork, they will also be able to find age-appropriate novels and other works of fiction and nonfiction that will be of interest to them. Libraries also may offer a wide selection of magazines that teens will find appealing on topics such as sports, music, the outdoors, entertainments, or current events. Teens generally like to choose their own books and materials. We provide computers and multimedia. Many libraries lend CDs and DVDs and have computers or multimedia programs that are of great interest to teens. Libraries may also offer computer programming and design courses. We offer things like enrichment programs, academic support, and youth education. Libraries may offer book talks, summer reading programs, creative writing seminars, drama groups, poetry readings for middle and junior high school kids. In many areas, libraries also have special services for helping students with homework and research projects, including telephone or internet help, workshops, test prep, or tutoring programs. A number of public libraries have developed special programs for teens to help them as they make the transition into adulthood. The local public library can help young people seeking information on very serious personal choices. There's information on school and career planning, including choosing a college or financial aid. Many libraries distribute educational materials on drugs or alcohol for children and parents. And many others act as referral agencies to community resources like counseling centers or runaway services. Libraries today are also providing maker spaces. They may help with building relationships both between the youth and with the staff as trusted adults. Libraries can provide a hangout space. Libraries provide volunteer and employment opportunities. Many times, libraries enlist teenagers to help with programs for younger children, such as tutoring summer reading program participants or doing puppet and craft shows, storytelling, theater productions. In addition, libraries frequently offer part-time job opportunities for teens, both volunteer and paid, to help with such tasks such as checking in books or reshelving materials. Many libraries also have a teen advisory board. What comes next? Once your teens get involved in your library and with your programs, can you let them continue coming to teen programs after age 18? No. If there's an interest in these topics, then you need to create a separate program for 18 to 25-year-olds who are sometimes called new adults. A vision of public libraries as providers of lifelong learning opportunities can be found as early as the late 19th century. Adams, in 1887, suggested that every public library should be a people's university, the highest of high schools in the community. Remember, age 18 until death are considered adults. That's a very wide age span, especially since we're living even longer today. We can separate adults by a number of methods. One way is by breaking them down by stages of life: retirees, pre-retirees, people new to the community, or the group we just talked about, new adults. Another way to distinguish between groups of adults is how they choose to learn. Formal education is linked with schools and training institutions. Non-formal is linked with community groups and other organizations like libraries. And informal learning covers what's left. Libraries do both informal and non-formal. Non-formal learning has some structure. Computer classes or extension classes might be examples of non-formal learning. We also provide informal learning, which is completely self-directed. It may be reading about something you're interested in. It may be looking something up on a computer. It may be asking questions. Let's take a look at another common way to group adults. You hear all kinds of reference to baby boomer, Gen Xers, millennials. Did you know that the term baby boomers was coined by an advertising company? Now we assign more meaning to these terms and all kinds of services. Retail, education, medical are all designed to meet the perceived needs of each of these generations. Let's talk about each of these a little bit before we think about how we might provide services for them. The silent generation is also known as traditionalists. They were born between 1925 and 1945. This generation includes many political and civil rights leaders and includes most of those who fought during the Korean War. In the United States, the generation was comparatively small because of the financial insecurity of the 1930s, and the war in the early 40s caused people to have fewer children. Behaviors are based on experiences from the Depression. Some of the generalizations we think about with the silent generation are they want to feel needed. They strive for financial security. They are conformists. They are conservative. They value traditional family values. They demand quality, and they're team players. Let's look at the baby boomers. They were born between 1946 and 1964. Boomers grew up at a time of dramatic social change. In the United States, that social change marked the generation with strong cultural cleavage between the proponents of social change and the more conservative. Some analysts believe this division played out politically since the time of the Vietnam War to the mid-2000s, to some extent defining the political landscape and division in the country. The baby boomer cohort number 1, which was born from 1946 to 1945, is the cohort who epitomized the cultural changes of the 60s. The generalization of that cohort: they're experimental, they're strong individualists, they are free-spirited, and they are social cause oriented. Baby boomer cohort number 2 was born from 1956 to 1964. The generalizations about this group: they are less optimistic, they have a distrust of government, and they are generally cynics. Let's move on to Generation X. They were born from 1965 to 1980. This is a generation whose worldview is based on change, on the need to combat corruption, on dictatorships, abuse, AIDS, a generation in search of human dignity and individual freedom, the need for stability, love, tolerance, and human rights for all. Some call Gen Xers the latchkey generation because their personal identity was in part shaped by the independence of being left alone after school when they were children. Compared with previous generations, Generation X represents a more heterogeneous generation, embracing social diversity in terms of such characteristics as race, class, religion, ethnicity, culture, language, gender identity, and sexual orientation. The millennials, also known as Generation X, were born from 1980 to the late 1990s. The economic prospects for some millennials have declined, largely due to the Great Recession in the late 2000s. Student loans are high and job prospects are low. Let's take a look now at the millennials. They were born from 1980 to the late 1990s. The economic prospects for some millennials have declined largely due to the Great Recession in the late 2000s. Student loans are high and job prospects are low. They are detached from institutions and they network with friends. Some employers are concerned that millennials have too great of expectations from the workplace. Some studies predict they will switch jobs frequently, holding many more jobs than Gen Xers due to their great expectations. And our last group, Generation Edge or Gen Z. They were born in the late 1990s to now. Members of Generation Edge are typically thought of as being comfortable with technology and interacting on social media websites for a significant portion of their socializing. Some commentators have suggested that growing up through the Great Recession has given them a feeling of unsettlement and insecurity. 55% are Caucasian, 24% are Hispanic, 14% are African American, 4% are Asian, and 4% are multiracial. Non-traditional households are one of the most prominent features associated with Gen Edge's familial culture. Their parents are Gen Xers. This group is realistic and resilient and resourceful. The only world Gen Edge has known is a complex one. They've never known simpler times. Complexity is where they thrive, whether it's in the form of technology, social media, or deciding what to do after high school. They've been dealing with too much versus too little information their entire lives. It means they've had to learn to tell the good from the bad. It's allowed them to navigate the world with a degree of savviness far beyond their years. So now, once again, how do all these characteristics that we just talked about make a difference, not only in what services we offer, but also in how we offer them? So here are a few strategies to help you provide service for adults. One of the things we want to do is reduce barriers and create easier access to information. Maybe have a night to learn about apps. Have people share their favorite app and teach others about technology. You could provide a shared space, or that third space as we call it, for people to teach each other. Think about things like knitting and quilting classes or card games. Partner, partner, partner. Partner with your Alzheimer's Association, the American Heart Association, hospital education departments, senior centers. You can go there and you can have them come to you. Partner with your Parks and Rec department, your veterans associations, the local colleges and universities, service clubs, AERP, local nursing homes and care centers. Don't forget to ask for help. Have a robust job description for skilled volunteers. Maybe you want them to lead library tours, or teach classes, or review resumes. Seek wisdom from within. What are the children and teen programs? Ask for the library board to help you promote your programs to their friends. Police and fire departments can do safety programs. Always think about what's popular. A few of our programs have started because people were asking for it. They wanted to do adult coloring. They wanted to have a domino club or a bridge club. Many libraries have knitting clubs. And finally, visit with your patrons and community. Talk to those friendly patrons and see what their hobbies and their interests are. In this next section, we're going to define reference service. We're going to learn about the role of information literacy in reference. We're going to describe the various locations where reference happens. We're going to explain the difference between reference and directional questions. We'll talk about the basic steps of a reference interview, and explain the role of ethics to reference. The reference services you provide can be considered part of that unstructured learning that happens in libraries. A definition from the Reference and User Services Association from ALA is a reference transaction is an information consultation in which library staff recommend, interpret, evaluate, and or use information resources to help others meet particular information needs. Reference transactions do not include formal instruction or exchanges that provide assistance with locations, schedules, equipment, supplies, or policy statements. The reference interview has stood the test of time, but reference work has changed dramatically in the past 15 to 20 years, thanks in large part to technology and access to information resources. Reference used to occupy large spaces in libraries. These spaces were filled with volume after volume of encyclopedias, dictionaries, atlases, almanacs that were very expensive and had to be updated regularly. In addition to the large collections, many reference librarians used what they called ready reference tools, a select collection that they used most frequently and kept by their desk. Reference librarians usually sat at a desk and waited for people to approach them with questions, or they answered questions called in by phone. As email became more popular, reference librarians sat at their desk and answered email. And when chat was introduced, reference librarians sat and answered chat. Do you see the trend here? Reference used to mean waiting for people to come to you with questions so you could then enlighten them with information where they could find answers. Reference desks were anchored in the center of a reference collection. But technology changed reference, starting with the changes to collections. Rather than keep up large collections of expensive reference books, libraries could purchase online tools and use free internet resources to help library users. No longer was there a need for those big reference spaces. Then, as more people gained access to the same resources outside of the library, reference transactions in libraries changed again and even dropped off in many places. No longer could reference librarians sit and wait for people to come to them because people were finding information on their own. This meant that libraries could justify fewer staff devoted to reference and that they had to figure out a new way to develop reference, not tied to a desk in a certain space anymore. This also changed the type of reference questions librarians were getting. People might be able to find the information, but could they find the best information? Reference started to turn more towards information and digital literacy. To help fight that trend of reference librarians sitting and waiting for people to come to them, pop-up libraries and reference stations are getting popular in all kinds of libraries. It's basically taking the bookmobile concept and adding services. If you decided to create a pop-up library, where would you go with it? How might the setting change the type of questions that you're asked? For an example, perhaps you open a pop-up library at the farmer's market. Maybe you're going to be getting gardening questions there. Or maybe you're going to open up a pop-up reference desk at a school carnival where you can provide homework help. Or maybe you go to the local bar to help provide answers for trivia questions. One big piece of advice about the ethics of reference is you need to be discreet. It's not our job to judge what people ask for, particularly when they're asking for sensitive information. The American Library Association has a code of ethics. It says, we protect each library user's right to privacy and confidentiality with respect to information sought or received and resources consulted, borrowed, acquired, or transmitted. Librarians are ethically bound to be non-judgmental of people's information needs. And this is very important. We are just librarians. We are experts in finding and organizing information, but we are not legal, medical, or tax experts. Anytime you get a question that you think counts as a legal, medical, or financial advice, play it safe and refer that person to an expert in that field. One concern I hear from lots of librarians who don't have experience or training in reference is, but what if I don't know the answer? Never fear. The point of reference isn't that you know the answer to every question. It's that you can guide the person with the question towards information that will help them find the answer that best suits their information need. An important part of providing good reference service is knowing the resources available to you and your library users. Even more important is making sure you understand exactly what information your library user needs. An important aspect of the reference transaction, then, is what we call the reference interview. That sounds very formal, but basically it's the process of finding out exactly what people need to know so you can guide them towards the best resource. So the parts to a good reference interview: visibility and approachability. Make sure that people know where they find a person that can help them with a reference question, both in person and online. Use signs, post hours when someone is available, give them a name. Second, interest. Focus your attention on the person asking the question. Be objective. Watch your body language. Listening and inquiring. Monitor your tone of voice. Don't interrupt. Ask lots of questions to clarify exactly what is being asked. The next part to a reference interview is searching. Find out the ways the person has already tried searching. Be sure you feel comfortable with the tool you're using to search. Respect that person's time. If you can tell they're in a hurry, ask for their contact information and offer to get back to them with more. Follow up. Get up and lead the person to the information if it's physically available in the library. If it's online, show them where you found it. Ask to make sure the information need has been met, and encourage the person to ask for more help if they find they don't have all the information they need. When you start the reference interview, one of the first things you'll be able to do is differentiate between a reference question and a directional question. Directionals are questions that you can answer without having to look anything up. An example of a directional question: where's the bathroom? Where are the DVDs? A reference question requires a little more work, and you'll probably have to use the catalog, a database, or a search engine to help them answer. An example of a reference question: can you help me find information about growing tomatoes? How can I get information about a car that I should buy? Reader's advisory is also considered reference. I'm going to give you much more information about Reader's advisory next. As we turn to Reader's advisory services, we'll take a look at a definition. We'll identify resources that can be used for Reader's advisory. We'll describe the components of a Reader's advisory interaction and describe book characteristics that guide Reader's advisory. Because the library can often be confusing in their organization and layout, Reader's advisors are crucial in providing the library's leisure reading material to the reader. Reader's advisors should endeavor to be knowledgeable about both fiction and nonfiction, particularly what is popular in their libraries. My favorite definition of Reader's advisory service: finding the right book for the right person at the right time. We try to help readers find the best, most enjoyable reading that matches their needs, interests, and reading level. So what skills do you need to connect readers with authors and writers? You need to be willing to read widely to become familiar with genres, both fiction and nonfiction. You need to have knowledge of your patrons. You need to understand the appeal of books and the factors that affect that appeal. and you need to master the Reader's Advisory interview. You should always be prepared ahead of time. Develop your pattern. Have your list of go-to books. And always check what's on the shelves, what's on the bestseller list, what's on display, what's at a bookstore, what do you find at other libraries. Always be on the alert. We're going to look at resources later, and we'll talk about some homework that I have for you as well. One good way to do this is to practice with another staff member. Check Facebook and think, what would I recommend for that person? Another way to always be prepared is to use the question, tell me about a book that you read that you really enjoyed. Or tell me the story of the last book that you enjoyed. You're going to want to have a conversation. There'll be 3 parts to this conversation: the approach, the dialogue, and escape. So don't ask the person, what do you like? Instead say, tell me about a book you've read and enjoyed. And are you in the mood for something different? Another conversation starter, what is the last book you hated and why? So how do you start that conversation? Maybe they ask for something that's not on the shelf, so you don't have anything to give them. Maybe they request a bestseller. Maybe you just see them browsing. Maybe they come right up and ask you outright, what should I read today? You want to be opportunistic, not premeditated. Take clues from their body language. Stay within your own comfort zone. Remember, Reader's Advisory is a dialogue with your patron. Also remember that tastes change, and we always suggest, don't recommend. Let the reader talk and listen to them. You want to talk with patrons, not to them. Make the book center stage. Keep yourself out of the way. Be upfront about what you've read, what you've just heard about from other people, or what you've read reviews of. Be prepared to change course if you misunderstood. I have a great example of this one. A woman came to me and said, what can you recommend? I want some classics. And I gave her all kinds of good literature that were considered classics in the time. Nothing I suggested was what she wanted. Finally, I thought to ask her what it was exactly that she was looking for. Who is an example of what you consider a classic author? And she mentioned Stephen King. That gave me a completely different direction to go for as I was trying to figure out what to give her. Remember to offer what's available now. Frequently, they've already found that what they want isn't on the shelf, so we need to find something that they can have and take home with them. Always be sure to offer choices. Admit it when you don't have a clue. Give them permission to put it back. Don't overwhelm them. Make a suggestion, then leave, so a patron doesn't feel bound to take something so as not to hurt your feelings. Mention the displays, tools, and other resources so they can find things on their own. And then don't forget to have an exit strategy to escape. Use a follow-up question like, be sure to let us know how you liked the book, or are there any other books I can help you find? So what is appeal? Appeal is the bedrock upon which all other Reader's Advisory work is based. It's essential that all staff involved in Reader's Advisory have a solid understanding of appeal and can recognize and work with appeal in many settings, in conversation, in print, or while reading. Appeal factors help readers decide whether or not a book fits their style or mood. What's heartwarming to one reader may be saccharine to another. What is mildly sensuous might be quite shocking to some. Appeal is a way to capture the essential essence of a book that the reader enjoys. All books, movies, audiobooks, etc., can be viewed through the framework of appeal, and the elements a reader enjoys can be identified and then matched to the appeal elements. Readers' advisors take those elements and act as translators between the reader and the book they enjoy. Readers' advisors listen to readers as they talk about books they've either enjoyed or disliked and translate what the reader says into the framework of appeal. We then use our knowledge of appeal to suggest a wide range of other title possibilities that match the appeal factors the reader has shared with us. Appeal is the key to understanding why a reader enjoyed one book and why he or she might enjoy another. These appeal elements are interdependent and work in concert to shape how a reader experiences a book. Nancy Pearl, who is a librarian extraordinaire, suggests that readers enter the world of a book through one of four doorways, appeal factors: story, setting, character, and language. In Pearl's model, readers' advisors consider the primary way a reader responds to a book and then seeks matching books that have similar doorways. This streamlined view of appeal is a very good way to start working with readers. Not only does it mean that those new to Reader's Advisory can focus on four broad areas, but the concepts also often directly match what readers tell us when we ask them to describe a book they enjoyed. Readers who talk about what happened in the book tend to enter through the story doorway, while readers who discuss the beautiful writing enter books through the language doorway. Readers who describe the people in the story more than what happened to those people gravitate toward books entered via the character doorway, while those who talk about location or place enter books through the setting doorway. You can also look at books via genre groupings, and this method allows readers' advisors to group books together based on major appeal classification and gives those new to Readers Advisor services a quick and easy way to start making connections between titles. Here are just a few resources you can use as you're trying to come up with books to the question, what should I read next? There are lots of commercial products. Two that are very common are Novelist, and the second one is a Gale product called Books and Authors. You can go to other library catalogs if you don't have either of these products and use their resources to find information. Another one that I really like to mention to people is Goodreads. If you aren't familiar with it, I recommend anybody who's doing Readers Advisory services to create an account on Goodreads, and you'll have access to lots of reviews and other people's opinions. Don't forget publisher sites like Simon & Schuster or Penguin Random House, as well as booksellers like Amazon, Ingram, and Baker & Taylor. Lots of authors have their own websites, which can be a wealth of information. There are review magazines like Book Pages or Library Journal, and other media sources like NPR or Good Morning America. They also have information useful for providing Reader's Advisory service. And finally, local experts. Think about who your local experts might be. You may not read comic books, but if you're trying to help someone find good comics, go to the local comic book store and talk to the employees there. That's your local expert. Your local community theater, if you're talking to people about plays that they might enjoy or films that they might enjoy. School librarians are great resources when you're looking for information on what kids are looking for today. If you have other staff members, be sure to talk to them about what they read and enjoy. And there are lots of blogs out there that you can subscribe to get more information about Readers Advisory services. So here are just a few tips to take us from failure to success. In your interactions with patrons, listen to clues about what they're interested in. Respect what they want to read. Use words that allow choices. Remember, you don't have to read everything. You don't need to remember the plot. You don't need to like what you recommend. You don't need to find the perfect book. Be sure to read outside of your genre. Always practice. Stand in your stacks and think about authors that you know well. Think about who else you would suggest. Chat with your friends or other staff while you're in the stacks. Chat with strangers in a bookstore or in the grocery store. Expectations are pretty low then because you're not officially on the job. And here's your homework. Keep a log of what you read. Design a personal reading plan. Don't forget that you don't have to read everything word to word, word for word. Consider speed reading. Read reviews everywhere. Look for the appeal of a book and who its potential audience might be. Subscribe to a genre mailing list or a blog. Try it for a month or two, then try a different one. Create read-alike bookmarks or shelf talkers. Use online classes and articles for more information. And be sure to develop some leading questions. We don't want our patrons to walk out like this, overwhelmed, but happy, like this. Each person, their book. This concludes the Library Services module of the Core Endorsement course, Introduction to Library Services. Don't forget, you may always call your district consultant for more information about this topic. Thanks for watching.